As we pointed out numerous times, Torah, the entire Tanakh juxtaposes Yitro and later on descendants of his, family members of his, and Amalek, and always begs us and pleads us to ask, by doing so, how do we respond to other people's success? Will we attack it, try to knock them down like Amalek does to the Jewish people, or will we hear it and rejoice and be happy for them? Sometimes the threat is to us. We have not succeeded, but they have. But can we somehow, emotionally, even if it's a time of difficult pain, can we rejoice when others are successful, even if we ourselves perhaps are not thriving at that moment? That's the juxtaposition of the end of last week's parsha, which is the attack of Amalek, with this week's parsha. Amalek hears about Jewish people's success and attacks. Yitro hears Jewish people's success and joins them and praises God and offers advice to the future. But there's something deeper. When we think about the Torah, one of the great things about studying Torah is the conversation that goes through generations. There's the biblical text. How do we understand it? We talked last week about a lot about Kriyat Yam Suf and trying to understand it through greater understanding of Egyptian society, Egyptian culture, hieroglyphics, etc., etc., in terms of understanding the song. But there are other layers that the rabbis build up over time. And I want to talk about that a little bit today, specifically in regards to Yitro. Who was Yitro? And there's this incredible line of thought that runs through the Midrash. There are a series of Midrashim about Yitro, and one of them goes all the way back to Egypt. And it says that Paro had a number of different advisors. When Paro was telling the Jewish people, was telling the Egyptians that we have to throw the Jewish babies into the Nile River, it says that Paro had three advisors. And none of this is based in the text of the Torah. There's no reason to see it here. It's the rabbis filling in holes. And it says there were three people there at that time. The first is Bilam. Bilam was the one who gave the advice. And it's Bilam Sheyatz Neherag. Bilam, who gave the advice to kill all the Jewish babies. What's going to happen to Bilam eventually? Eventually, Bilam dies. He's killed in a battle with the Jewish people. After the story, of course, of when he offers the praise when he offers the praise in the face of his Balak wanting him to curse the Jewish people. A second is Eov. It says that Eov was silent. Eov sheshatak nidon b'yisurim. Eov was silent, and because of his silence, he suffered with lots of punishment and suffered so much that he himself was unable, in a sense, to speak, at least for a point in time in his book. And then, of course, he opens his mouth and has lots to say, justifiably so, to God. And then the third one is Yitro. Yitro shebarach. Yitro, it says, heard what was being said by Paro, heard about it, and he disagreed with the advice, and he didn't have the ability perhaps to do anything about it. Maybe he argued about it, but he ran away. And the Midrash says, Zahu vanav le'shev b'lishkat hagazit. Because he ran away, his descendants sat in the chamber of hewn stone, the Lishkat Hagazit. The Lishkat Hagazit, if I am correct, is the place where the Sanhedrin sat at the Beit HaMikdash. Was the chamber. It wasn't there for the priests. It was there for the Sanhedrin, the great rabbis, great deciders of questions that came to them. They would later sit. And it's a beautiful idea. Now, what do the rabbis, where do they get this idea? So they point to a number of different places later on in the Tanakh, in Shoftim, in Divrei Yamim, in the book of Yirmiyahu. In Shoftim, it talks about umishpachot sofrim. It talks about the mishpachot that were scribes and helpers of the helpers of the Sanhedrin, of those who kept Jewish law, and it refers to them as Bnei Keni, Chotein Moshe. They were the descendants of Keni, would be Yitro, the Chotein Moshe, who was, of course, the father-in-law of Moshe. Yitro leaves the Jewish people, but maybe some later on of his descendants come back to the Jewish people. So we see that Yitro's line is embedded within Israel, and they are this enduring presence in Israel. And later on in Yirmiyahu goes about it at great length. And Yirmiyahu, in the 35th chapter of Yirmiyahu, talks about the Bnei Rechav. The Bnei Rechav are understood to be the descendants of Yitro. It says, and this is from Yirmiyahu 35, Lech el Beit HaRechavim, Yirmiyahu the prophet, and it's towards the end of the time, of course, destruction of the first Beit HaMikdash. Yirmiyahu is told to go to the house of the Rechavim. Go to them, right, and go with them to the Beit Hamikdash, and he goes with them, and they are people who have a place to go to the Beit Hamikdash. Later on in that chapter, it says, "Beit HaRechavim Amar Yirmiyahu." Yirmiyahu gives a reward to them from God because they listened to Yirmiyahu. Ko Amar Hashem Tzvaot Elokei Yisrael Yana Asher Shamatem Al Mitzvot Yonadav Avichem V'Tishmu Et Kol Mitzvotav, because you listen to your ancestor Yehonadav and you listen to the mitzvot. Lachein Ko Amar Hashem Tzvaot Elokei Yisrael Lo Yikaret Ish LiYonadav Ben Rechev Omeid Lifanai Kol Hayamim. Because of that, your descendants will stand next to me for all generations. They'll stand close to me. They will not be destroyed, decimated. They will not be sent away, sort of in the same way of much of Bnei Yisrael. Of course, Yirmiyahu, the prophet of destruction. Here, there is a little bit of lining. So what the rabbis are doing here, in a wonderful way, is what they're saying is Yitro fled from Pharaoh's court. He fled from a place of immorality. And because he fled from a place of immorality, his descendants are there to stand before God's court. It's a beautiful idea, and it's a wonderful sort of contrast. Yitro, right, again, sits in Pharaoh's court. His children are invited into God's court. And it's an interesting sort of discussion, thought about how do outsiders shape Torah? How do people who are not part of the Jewish community, which is who Yitro is? Yitro, in a sense, is part of the Jewish community. He's Moshe's father-in-law, and his grandchildren are obviously parts of the Jewish community. The sons of Moshe, Leviim, his daughter, married to Moshe. He has a stake in the game. There is no question. But he's an outsider, and that's a big piece of what Yitro does in the portion where he sees Moshe sitting alone and judging day and night. And maybe he was just being a good grandfather, maybe he was just being a good father, and said to Moshe, "You're going to burn out. You need to find people to help you in your judging of Bnei Yisrael, and you're running things. You need it's a bad word generally, you need a bureaucracy. You need other people to assist you, or else the nation will suffer and you will suffer." So you could say, on one hand, what Yitro is doing, Yitro is being a good father-in-law, he's being a good father, he's being a good grandfather, but he's also being a logical person who's coming from a different place and offering advice to the Jewish people. And so Yitro, right, he runs from Pharaoh's evil court and he runs to the court, and therefore his descendants, outsiders, take up a spot outside, close to God's court, the Lishkat Hagazit. They're right by the Beit Hamikdash. They're right by the Sanhedrin. It's a beautiful lesson. It's one that's an important lesson. Just generally, outsiders. The first place I heard about this a long time was from Rabbi David Silber spoke about it. But outsiders are very, very important in the Torah because you have a group that's in power, that's in charge, and they want to do whatever they want to do. And they will, to keep themselves in power, they'll let things just continue without thinking of changing things, tweaking things, investigating things. And a lot of times you need outsiders to come in and to question things. Consummate outsider, Rabbi Silber talks about, is Chana. Chana, at the beginning of the book of Shmuel, where we have the Mishkan in Shiloh, which is led by Eli. Eli is not corrupt, but he is old. He's out of touch. He doesn't know what's going on. He thinks that Chana is drunk. What does it say about somebody's leadership when she is sincere? He doesn't know how to differentiate sincerity from drunkenness. Chana is a woman. Chana is a barren woman, somebody who that's all women did then was they were just in a sense a vehicle for babies. She feels like a nothing because she can't have children. So she is the consummate outsider, and she through her son, changes the face of the Jewish people with her son Shmuel. Avraham, of course, when he comes to the land of Israel, is an outsider. There's so many others throughout history. This theme and this idea continues not just in the works of the Torah and in the Tanakh. It's in the rabbinic ideas also. The greatest of the Amoraim, the rabbis at the time of the Gemara, was an outsider. Rabbi Akiva. I should say the Tanaim, not the Amoraim. Rabbi Akiva is an outsider. Rabbi Akiva does not grow up in the rabbinic courts. He does not grow up with his father being great scholars. He talks about if he would see a rabbinic scholar, he would bite them. The stories about him being 40 years old. Rabbi Akiva changes the method. Rabbi Akiva was doresh. The way that he understood and analyzed text was different than what was being done generally at his time period. Why? Because he was from the outside. And so it's an interesting thing to think about the morality of Yitro. Yitro running away. I can't be part of this. I can't be part of this evil court. His descendants, therefore, are right there next to the court. Almost like I'm not saying that they were the ethics compliance officers, but right, you can think of them as that. They're there next to the Sanhedrin. They're there next to the Beit HaMikdash. They're there and perhaps embodying the value that Yitro has. And it opens up a larger question about outsiders and the impact that they have on Jewish life and generally in life in general. We know in this country, of course, talk about draining the swamp and changing everything, and everything is going to get better because everything was so corrupt. I don't know how that's worked out, but certainly, our people, it's something for us to note and always to be open that it shouldn't always be just continue things the way they are. We need to investigate. We need to think about what ideas from the outside, what can we study and can we learn, what people can come and help our people, help our Torah at all times. One of the lessons way from the beginning, according to the rabbis, that we learn from Vayishma Yitro. Yitro hears and he comes and aids the Jewish people.